The rain splashed against the pavement in Ravensbeak City, turning streets into slick mirrors under neon lights advertising everything from feather grooming to gourmet breadcrumbs. Shadows danced through alleys, concealing secrets more tangled than a duck's nest. Detective Drake Mallard, known around these parts simply as Detective Duck, leaned against his weathered pond cruiser, his fedora tilted at a rakish angle, raindrops slipping off its brim like tears from a melodramatic goose. His trench coat hung heavily, soaked from the relentless drizzle, yet he wore it like the feathers of honor on an ancient drake. He puffed on a candy cigarette, the sugary smoke wafting around him. His webbed feet were planted firmly on the slick pavement, polished yet scuffed from too many chases down too many alleys. His sharp beady eyes narrowed as he scanned the scene of the crime. Another feathered soul had quacked its last. "Looks personal," quipped Officer Waddles, the young goose with a bright-eyed optimism yet to be worn down by the city's grime. She waddled over, notebook in wing, her neatly pressed uniform pristine despite the pouring rain. "Always is," Detective Duck quacked gruffly, flicking his candy cigarette into a puddle. "Who found the victim?" "A homeless pigeon," Waddles replied. "Was looking for scraps. Saw nothing, heard nothing." "Typical," Duck muttered, waddling toward the alley. The crime scene awaited him like an old friend who owed him money. The victim, a rooster named Rocky Cluck, was sprawled dramatically against the brick wall, covered in DuckTales rule graffiti. His eyes wide and unseeing, beak agape in shock, feathers ruffled and soaked. Detective Duck bent down, inspecting the scene closely. A torn wing, missing pocket watch, faint traces of lipstick on the comb. "Recognize him?" Waddles asked, carefully stepping around a puddle shimmering with oil. "Rocky Cluck," Duck sighed. "Used to crow too loud, too often, worked the docks, had more enemies than a fox in a henhouse." "Foul mafia?" "Maybe," Duck said darkly. Ravensbeak City's underworld was no laughing matter, even if half its residents waddled when they walked. But my gut says it's something featherier. "What's featherier than the mob?" "Someone with nothing left to quack about," Duck answered, standing back up with a weary groan. Old injuries ached. Memories he'd prefer stayed forgotten surfaced. Someone dangerous. The rain came down harder, soaking them thoroughly, as if punishing them for their insolence. Detective Duck straightened his coat and waddled back toward his cruiser. "Where to next, Detective?" Waddles asked, her voice eager despite the grim situation.
Duck paused dramatically, one wing on his cruiser's door, gaze fixed on the distant harbor where lights twinkled deceptively. "The docks," he finally quacked, deep and dramatic. "There's always a bigger pond at the docks." With a splash, they sped off into the stormy night, Ravensbeak City swallowing them whole, ready to hatch yet another darkly ridiculous mystery. Chapter 2. Foul Play at the Quackers Lounge. The Quackers Lounge was the kind of place decent ducks avoided after sundown. But Detective Duck wasn't your average bill for hire. He squinted through curls of smoke, sizing up the regular crowd. On stage, an alluring swan crooned softly into the microphone, her voice smooth as pond water on a windless night. A fox bartender polished glasses with calculated boredom, his cunning eyes flicking between customers, tallying secrets as easily as he counted tips. Detective Duck waddled deliberately toward the bar, his fedora tilted low, shadowing a serious bill. He knew they recognized him. The hushed whispers and sideways glances from the bar's shady regulars told him that much. But he wasn't here to ruffle feathers unnecessarily, not yet anyway. "Evening, Ducky," drawled the fox, sliding a tumbler of swamp whiskey down the polished counter. Detective Duck caught it expertly with a practiced webbed foot, lifting it smoothly to his wingtip. Cut the cute stuff, Red. I'm not in the mood. The fox shrugged, his sly grin unwavering. You're never in the mood, Detective. Makes me wonder if those tail feathers are always twisted tight. Detective Duck ignored the jab, taking a slow, contemplative sip. He'd learned early that silence often spoke louder than quacks. Sure enough, the fox leaned in closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Heard you're sniffing around about that missing shipment of golden goose eggs. The detective fixed the fox with a stern glare. Word travels fast. Who's talking? Red laughed quietly, glancing nervously over his shoulder. You kidding? Every beak and muzzle in Pond City's quacking about it. Golden goose eggs don't just vanish into thin air. Detective Duck set his glass down with a deliberate clink. If you know something, Red, now's the time to spill. I'm not in the mood for dancing around the lily pads tonight. The fox leaned even closer, whispering carefully, his whiskers twitching. All right, all right. All I know is that the Weasel brothers were sniffing around that shipment right before it disappeared. You didn't hear it from me, Duck. Detective Duck nodded once, placing a few soggy bills on the bar. I never do. He turned away from the bar, intending to head out into the night, when a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. The doors slammed open, and a frightened-looking pigeon stumbled in, feathers disheveled and eyes wild. They got Benny the Beaver. He squawked, panic evident in his trembling wings. Dragged him right out of his lodge. He was saying too much. The room went dead silent. The swan's sultry notes ceased mid-melody. Every animal stared, waiting for Detective Duck's next move. With a resigned sigh, Detective Duck adjusted his fedora and waddled slowly towards the terrified pigeon. Easy, buddy. Who's they? The pigeon swallowed hard, glancing nervously at every shadow. Them Weasel brothers, Detective? They mean business. Detective Duck squared his wings, determination hardening his bill. So do I. He knew this was just the beginning of something messy. Messier than a duck pond after spring migration. But Detective Duck had never shied away from dirty waters. Tonight, Pond City was about to learn one immutable truth. You never play chicken with a duck who's got nothing left to lose. The detective stepped back into the damp night, feathers rustling defiantly against the chilly breeze, ready to hunt down a pair of scheming weasels who just crossed the wrong duck. Chapter 3. Weaseling Out Answers. The moon hung low and lazy over Pond City, casting long, crooked shadows across cobblestone streets. Detective Duck moved quickly, his steps echoing softly as rainwater splashed beneath his webbed feet. The tip-off about Benny the Beaver's abduction was still fresh. Fresh enough to leave a scent of trouble hanging thick in the air. Detective Duck knew Benny. The beaver was loud, obnoxious, and couldn't keep secrets if his life depended on it, which apparently it did. If Benny had been snatched up, the Weasel brothers had more to hide than even Duck initially thought. The Weasel brothers, Willie and Wally, had carved themselves a grimy little empire down in the seedy tunnels beneath Old Acorn Street. They dealt in counterfeit feathers, black market breadcrumbs, and hustled underground worm fights on weekends. They weren't smart, but they were cunning, slippery, and ruthless. Exactly the kind of criminals Duck loved to hate. As he approached Old Acorn Street, the detective slowed his pace, stepping quietly into the shadows. The alleyways here smelled of moldy leaves and stale bread. His keen eyes quickly spotted the hidden entrance beneath a trash can lid, propped suspiciously askew. Carefully, he lifted it and slipped inside, descending quietly into the damp underground maze. The tunnels beneath Pond City were slick and dark, lit only by dim, flickering fireflies trapped in mason jars mounted to mossy brick walls. Detective Duck navigated the winding corridors with practiced ease. He'd chased enough criminals through these passages to know every twist and turn by heart. After several turns, voices filtered from the darkness ahead, a nasal, high-pitched squawk that could only belong to Willie Weasel, followed by the deeper, sluggish tones of Wally. Duck pressed himself against the moist brick wall and listened carefully. "You think Benny blabbed, Wally?" Willie's voice whined anxiously. "He's got a big mouth, bigger than his teeth." "He better not have," grunted Wally, annoyed. "Boss Goose says if anyone quacks, we shut their beak permanently." Detective Duck's bill curled into a smirk. Boss Goose. Now there was a name he hadn't heard in a while. Rumors whispered that Boss Goose had retired to a lily pad villa in some sunny pond upstate, living off years of illegal egg smuggling profits. If he was involved, this was bigger than Duck expected. Silently, Duck crept forward, his feathers slick with tunnel slime, closing the distance to the weasel's chamber. When he finally peered around the corner, he spotted them hunched around a makeshift table piled high with stolen goods. Gold-plated feathers, rare birdseed, and a single unmistakable golden goose egg, shimmering faintly in the dim firefly glow. Before they could react, Duck stepped confidently into the chamber, clearing his throat loudly. "Evening, boys," he quacked coldly, tipping his fedora back just enough to let his fierce eyes glint in the flickering light. The weasels nearly jumped out of their matted fur. "Detective Duck," squeaked Willie, fumbling and nearly dropping the golden egg. "What a pleasant surprise." "Save the charm for someone gullible," Duck growled, pointing a wing accusingly at the shining egg. "Looks like you've been busy. Benny talk too much for your liking?" Wally stiffened, trying to appear intimidating despite his obvious trembling. "You've got nothing, Duck. We ain't done nothing wrong." "Your double negatives hurt my ears," Detective Duck replied dryly, stepping closer. "Where's Benny?" Willie shifted nervously, eyes darting wildly between Duck and his brother. Benny's on vacation." "Yeah, took a spontaneous fishing trip. Always said he loved fish." "Funny," Duck said coolly, drawing closer still, his voice icy. "Benny's allergic." The weasels exchanged panicked glances. Willie gulped audibly. "Well, you know Benny, always trying new things." "Enough quacking around," Duck snapped, slamming his wing on the table so hard the stolen goods rattled. "I'm losing patience. Tell me where Benny is, or you'll be swimming upstream faster than you can say foie gras." The weasels froze, recognizing the familiar steely edge in Detective Duck's voice. Willie was the first to crack. All right. Benny's tied up down in the old woodchuck's warehouse by Dock 47. We were just following orders. Boss Goose wanted Benny silenced till the heat died down." Detective Duck leaned back slightly, satisfied for now. "You made the right choice. Consider yourselves lucky I'm feeling charitable tonight. But if Benny isn't exactly where you say, I'll come back here and roast you both over an open fire." Without waiting for a response, Duck turned, leaving the weasels trembling behind him. As he made his way back through the tunnels, he pondered the implications. Boss Goose's return meant Pond City was on the brink of a turf war messier than a feeding frenzy at a duck pond. And Detective Duck had just become the only bird standing between order and chaos. Emerging back into the damp night air, Detective Duck straightened his fedora and glanced toward Doc 47. He was about to dive deeper into trouble, but he wouldn't have it any other way.